Okay, so thank you for coming, everybody. Lou-Marié was worried that nobody would come, but just because you're a therapist doesn't mean you're not neurotic. So Lou-Marié, you wrote a wonderful book, a shocking book in many ways, a troubling book, but a wonderful book. I was on the beach on Sunday, and then I had to leave because I was crying so much that all the other people around me were looking at me strangely. I want to start because you're a psychologist, you're a therapist. Much of the book comes from your work that you did in the Valley. But early in the book you have a scene where you have to put on the form that the census people use, what people's lives are about. You have to tick the boxes, and you say then, I can't tick these boxes because these boxes doesn't tell the story of people's lives. So from one perspective, the whole book is about that. You want to say a little bit more about that, and then about how that relates to how you see your work as a therapist.
Yeah, the form that you referred to, it is not actually the clinical evaluation form for my students who are here that we fill in as conditions, and it starts with demographics. And as I was doing my work, I realized it's very difficult to fill out that form. You know, it assumes certain things, the form, that we know what a family is, that we know what race is, that we know what language is, that and that is very hard. But it actually goes much. So that was the form that I referred to early in the book. But the bigger story is perhaps that the book is in a way a protest against other forms where people have tick boxes of symptoms and signs, and where people are categorized in diagnostic categories, and I think reduced to diagnostic categories. So the book is in a way, I think, my small way of protesting that and saying no, people are more complex than diagnosis. And while I will never say that diagnosis is not important, of course it's incredibly important, and it's a way for clinicians to communicate with psychiatrists, with other clinicians. It is a shorthand to quickly know what's going on with a person. Often is the way we determine what medication is. If you really want to understand a person and figure out how to support a person as a psychologist, you need to do much more. And the way what I see at the moment is that too often clinicians will diagnose a person, think they know then what's going on with the person, and then move on to treatment. Whereas, and I think that way, diagnosis often obscure the complexity of people.
But that sounds a bit like those of us who are not clinicians as well. We make diagnosis, so to speak, about people. So in that sense, the book is also about that kind of blindness or indifference or whatever you want to call it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it certainly is about the blindness of clinicians, the blindness of academics, researchers, but I think it's also the blindness of me as a middle class white person, and how I don't see people and don't notice people if I can't relate to them. So, and in a way, I hope it is a way to make visible some people whose lives and complex lives. I want to, yes, we see there's a good person on the street, but to understand that every person on the street, every person that we meet has different layers. You know, not only the privilege to have unconscious, but you know, it's as complex when you live in a simple life and when you live in poverty.
So the difficulty is now, how do you do that? You are a white upper middle class woman. living in Mosterdstrift of all places. And so, it's very difficult, it's ethically very difficult to write a book then about people who are poor. So how would you overcome, I know that it was difficult for you to write this book, so what strategies did you use in writing that made that easier or made you continue with the book despite the fact that sometimes you thought maybe you shouldn't write it at all?
I don't think I've overcome it in any way. I mean, it's still there. I still fluctuate between thinking the book is a problem or the book can make a contribution. I never think the book is a good thing by definition. I mean, Charles said mostly good thing. I'm very interested in what is the other side because I think the reason why I could go on writing is because I couldn't not write. That it felt at a certain point to write would be to portray the people that we're writing about. I will portray them, I'll portray myself, I'll portray my neighbors. But not to write is also a betrayal because there are certain things that I've seen and that I've noted and to not write about would be a mistake. And there are ways in which I think the white paralysis, the white middle class paralysis, can become a bad excuse for not engaging. And I think my comfort in sending my publisher here because it imprints a lovely cover, by the way, fantastic. And
beautiful cover.
and they were so patient because since they commissioned the book, it took about another 4 years. All my friends wrote 2 books in a time that the finishing touches on my book. So they were incredibly patient because I felt very paralyzed. But I'm very clear that bringing out the book is the beginning of the process. The book doesn't stop in public. Now it's engaging with people and getting responses and understanding where I'm racist, where I'm sexist, where I'm classist, where I get it wrong. And so I'm interested very much in this conversation. I would much rather hear what people think about it than say what I think.
So, yes, Nathan from Tower mentioned he quotes the part of the WhatsApp message of the neighborhood WhatsApp group, and he says it's like a poem that encapsulates everything that is wrong with white suburban South Africa. So your neighbors still speak to you?
Well, maybe they never did. But yes, I think one way of dealing with the paralysis and not knowing how to write this book was to think that I can't just have this omnipotent gaze on an impoverished community, that in a certain way I have to turn the gaze back to myself. And I have a huge problem with people declaring at the beginning of our article, I'm a white middle class researcher and I'm so to really engage with what it means that I'm watching and that I'm reporting and that I also need to look at myself, but also without being self-indulgent. And that's so difficult because you, Rinaldo writes about victimized drama. It's all about white females writing and how guilty they feel and how ashamed they feel. And she scoffs at it, you know. She says, "Oh, please, you know, they cry because they dress not fit people, you know, they actually do differently." But so I did think it was important to look at and I remember I lived that neighborhood, so I have nothing against my neighbors. I have something about how we live and how that privilege that we enjoy on a daily basis is at the expense of other people who are not privileged. And that sounds cool immediately. So I tried to highlight in different ways that what you feel it more.
Now, so right at the end of the book, so just that you know, I did read to the end. Right at the end of the book, hidden in a footnote, because you also need to read the footnotes, because the footnotes sometimes have the best poetry. You say, and then I realized, yes, this is true, that almost every chapter starts with you arriving, or your students arriving, and then it ends with you going away, or sometimes fleeing. So this is a little bit part of what you were saying now, trying to grapple with your own being, wanting to not being different, but at the same time, sometimes running away and being ashamed about the running away.
Yeah, actually always run away. I can always go home. I can always shut my computer down. I can publish the book. I can always be away from that particular the value kind of work or something. And I run away because I can. And there are people who can't run away from that kind of reality, and it's terrible. And yes, it's shameful. And I think that's why with the book out there, I can't run away. People will be critical of it. People will engage with me about it, and I can't hide. So
you can, yes, you can run away. Maybe it will help people to get some flavor for the book. And it's very difficult, I think, to read in part of it because some of the material is hard, but it's also sort of fun in a strange way, so it's complicated and it's politically complicated. But I thought maybe if you read the part, as we spoke about the difference about death and whose bodies are mournable. So I have marked it here, the two quotes there, and then the next page if you want to. I'm giving you instructions, it's something so good for once.
the first two quotes.
The first two quotes and then the passage. This is in the chapter on death.
Okay. It's a quote from Judith Butler: who counts as human? Whose lives count as lives? And finally, what makes for real life? And then Elie Wiesel says the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. And then there's the neck that you wanted to run. I'm waiting for a patient. The waiting room smells like Dettol and sweat and cup soup. There are 12 people waiting with me. Some people are watching the TV in the right-hand corner. Others are staring at the walls. The walls are covered in posters and notices. Recipes for tunias, block nose, and rehydrasi, rehydration. Big black handmade signs with arrows indicating rehydrasi hoekie, rehydration corner. Against the wall, a pine table with plastic cloth and plastic flowers, infant scale. Another table with 3 wooden boxes. Kondome, post, voorstellen. Condoms, mail, suggestions. A white cardboard doctor's jacket which serves as a brochure stand. The brochures are all about TB. A man in the 4th row gets up slowly. He coughs violently and stumbles over the green plastic chair next to him. In the process, he knocks over a few more chairs. He lands on the green melamine floor and lies still. The other patients watch him. The cardboard doctor's jacket does not move. The nurses laugh in the kitchen where they're having tea. The man stares. I get up and fetch a nurse. The nurse kneels at the man's side and feels his pulse. She puts her hand over her mouth. Dead, she says. He just died. My patient never turns up. It is spring in the valley.
Yes, so I want to ask, that passage is not your standard passage in an academic book. So you said that in somewhere in the book you say that you started off writing a purely academic book, or in some interviews. So what made you decide to write in a slightly different style, to hide the academic things in the footnotes, and to put yourself in the text in some way, and to be more personal.
Well, I started out very much writing a book about motherhood. I had a very conventional qualitative research study, 4 years of in-depth interviews with 100 women, everyone interviewed 4 times over time, and I went all gung-ho to the Rockefeller Institute's house in Bellagio, as one does if you're a lucky academic. And now I'm going to write this book on these poor people. And I got there and I started writing, and I thought, I know nothing. I can't relate to these interviews that my students worked on very hard to collect data, but it felt, it didn't feel alive. So that was one thing, and I realized I had to get to know the women myself. So I started working as a clinician in the Valley, where I did therapy, and I think I got a more sensible place, and I was since left. But the other thing was also that and I think many of my friends or academics share my frustration that academic writing has become an industry, and it's about how much you publish and how quickly, and who is reading it, and what happens with what is read. No one cares about. So it's this self-indulgent industry where knowledge does not translate in action and policy change, and university really is still our ivory tower because we don't have an impact. And I mean, the chapter on nurse abuse in maternity wards, I wrote in 2008. I thought now the newspapers are going to call me and say, what? You know, like, what is happening in maternity wards? No one read the article, no one saw it, you know. So in a sense, I thought what people, my big heroes like Amartya Sen, like economists, Paul Farmer, the anthropologists, they are saying that you need, if you want to convince people and if you want to understand things in more complex ways, you need biography. And not only biography, of course, biography as it's nested in a larger social matrix, and interacts with the social, cultural, political world, but statistics. Strangely enough, my one brother who's not here wrote something on our WhatsApp group this morning. He said statistics statistics are used in the same way a drunk man uses a lamppost. One wants him to use it to illuminate the world, but actually he uses it to lean against and to support him. You know, so
that makes sense. I mean, yeah, we know that our academic articles are not widely read.
But also, I lose interest, you know, in that kind of writing, because I can do it, and you know, you can get the recipe and you can do it. But it doesn't compel me. It's not beautiful writing. It doesn't convince me. So I think it won't convince other people.
Okay, so I want to ask about what if you get many people to read the book, what you want them to do with this. But before that, a little bit more on the writing style. I know that there was a time when we were both obsessed with Rachel Cusk and the Outline trilogy and the way in which she gets other people to tell their stories. So did that in the end, did that influence you? Did some other writing influence you to write in the style that you ended up writing?
Yeah, well, I Rachel Cusk is wonderful, but I think in a way, I don't think that I necessarily have a writing style. I think that I cite the women a lot. So I hope that their stories are forefronted, and that so I think I realized that I can't do the thing that you can do in a journal. If you have a qualitative review, you're allowed to quote 4 lines. Yeah, I wanted to tell stories that have layers. So I hope. I remember when I happened onto how I want to write a book.
Tell us about it.
I had an encounter with a woman who was hungry, and I remember her real name, but in the book I call her Zelene Gold. And she, and it was terrible because she came and I did my usual in-depth interview, tell me what brought you here, as we all do. And she said, I'm hungry. And I realized I was totally stumped. I'm a psychologist. I can do broken relationships. I think I can do mood disorders, but as a psychologist, I could know nothing about hunger. And I was incredibly moved and upset and very ashamed. And I wrote, and I started working with her, and then she goes for training, and then she came back and she told me what has happened to her. I saw her after 8 weeks again. And I wrote up that story to a friend and as I wrote that story, I thought it was just her narrative and how she tells about her training at the backs of us, and I think I found...
And then how she gets a job in somebody's house who doesn't allow her to sit on the furniture.
Yeah, so I write how she's taught how to... She's coming and she tells me she really enjoyed this course. She learned to make real food, she learned to bake cake, and food that's not real, like pasta, and she learned how to iron clothes, and she learned how to make a bed, but for that she still needs a book because it's very difficult. And absolutely excited, and she says at the end, that's so beautiful, she says, and she learned, the big thing that she learned, that a mop is not a mop in Afrikaans. In Engels, a mop is a dweil in Afrikaans. So that's how she ends the story. But then it ends with, and then I say goodbye to her, she finds a job, and as luck would have it, one afternoon my daughter and I see, well, she's on the corner in my neighborhood, and I stop and I get out and I say, what brings you here? And she said she works here, and she said, and she doesn't need a book anymore for the beds, and the ironing's going fine. She just gets tired because during the day and she's not allowed to sit on the furniture. And of course I drove away, and as I do, but it is kind of a story that captures how she's needed in the neighborhood. But personally.
So that story, there are so many of those stories, and they all in a way about how privileged people, mostly white privileged people, how hard they work to stay indifferent to others, to poor people, to black people. So I'm wondering now about this book, and people are going to read it, some people are going to read it. What would you want people who maybe, like all of us, sometimes work to remain indifferent, what do you want us to get from the book? What is your text verse?
Well, I never have good sentences, but I quote somewhere, Kafka who says that writing should be the axe that breaks the frozen sea. And I really just want people to take note. And different people will do different things with what they read. If my first years read it, then maybe they'll look at psychology in a different way. If my clinical students read it, they will think hard before they stop at that diagnosis and look at other levels of a person's life. but I hope that it can go further than, you know, I mean, I have a fantasy that people will take notice, and that in me citing people like Nathan Cantrell and Alva come through, I think in very unique voices, and are telling the same stories that I am, and I think in more poetic ways, and actually also in very, very convincing ways. So I hope that that will make a contribution. Also, I hope, I mean, I'm very ready that I'm told where the book is problematic, and I think that conversation will be interesting if people tell me, you as a white person can't say that, this is racist. I think that's an interesting discussion in itself, because then I couldn't catch myself, and I don't know, and I'm interested.
And the people whose stories you tell, I mean, some people's stories are now in this book. People whose lives people are indifferent, many people are indifferent to their lives. So I don't know if you feel anything about that part of the book, that you are telling stories, complicated politically as it might be.
Well, it is, I mean, if I can say the F word, Foucault said, you know, who has the power to speak, and what do they speak about, and what do they do with speaking, you know, speaking about what they've seen, and also who cannot speak, and what about their power, and what they didn't tell me. So I'm very interested in that idea of I need to think why I tell what I tell, and I need to think what people told me and what they didn't tell me. But so, and again, I think it's going to be interesting to hear how people read the book. In the first place, I think I started being able to do the research more once I combined it with clinical work. And after those first 4 years, I never did straightforward research anymore. I always did it as part of clinical work, that at least I know that I'm busy doing something that the person that I'm interviewing came to do. You know, so it's not only for me to publish an article, you know, that at least I'm trying to give them something they need, they're depressed or they're anxious, or so in that sense I hoped that the interviews in themselves were therapeutic, were helpful. I wouldn't know, because you know, even with our first interviews, my students will remember, people always said, it's wonderful that you're asking me about my life, that you're interested in my life. I don't know, maybe they lied, they chose not to tell us that they actually, they find it horrible. Yeah, I won't know, but one gets a sense, and I think the conversations were meaningful. I hope that we can take it back and hear what people think. We're now doing a follow-up with the original 90 women. Don't know how many we'll find, but we are doing that. We have a clinic in the valley that all we're starting. Where are the other starters of the clinic? We are fighting to start a clinic in the valley, but yeah, I will be curious.
The valley, of course, being what is the name of the valley?
Well, it's the Dwars River Valley, but it's also the Bam Valley, the corner of Fear Valley. And our clinic is called the Bam Care Center.
Yeah, when I read, because you keep on referring to the valley, I kept on thinking, this is very revealing about how the childhood story invades one, but the biblical thing about whether if you're in the valley of the shadow of the valley of death, thou shalt not fear no evil. And I kept on thinking while reading the book, no, thou shalt fear evil. So speaking of evil, You told me the other day that the book on the chapter on hunger was for you in many ways the most important, or there was something about the chapter that got you. And in the chapter you speak about hunger, and then you say, well, hunger and desire, two sides of the same coin. So why this chapter? Why did you think about this chapter as important? Or
well, I think hunger is a metaphor that we refer to all the time in therapy, because it's, on the one hand, if you look at the definition of hunger, or the word immediately implies pain and distress and anguish, but it also implies desire. And I think everyone that comes to therapy or that comes for help or support is in some kind of pain, and they have hope, they have desire. So, and I know I felt very self-conscious, and I thought about it a lot, about using, the story that I told you about the women builders and hunger made me run straight into the materiality and the realness of being hungry. And it's different from being hungry for love or for reassurance. But everywhere in all my practices, I deal with hunger. And I think Michael Jackson, the anthropologist, writes that sometimes, he's really an anthropologist, but he writes about how hunger, sometimes hunger is just, sometimes something is not a metaphor, but then he says, but maybe it can be both. And I think the people in the valley are hungry in very concrete ways. And I think hunger is a much better word than the social sciences word, food insecurity. It removes you from people. Hunger immediately brings up images of the mouth and teeth and a lean body. But that I realize that the people in the valley are hungry, but they're also hungry for all the same ways that people in my middle class practice are hungry. They're also hungry for respect and dignity and love and affirmation, and being noticed and being seen and being taken seriously. So it's kind of in the middle of the book, and I think.
So there was you sometimes in the book you then use, because you also have a private practice, and so then you use some stories from people who comes to your private home, the beautiful house in Bostonstraat.
Okay, that's so nice.
Yes. Just use it.
Sort of scam.
And so, wow, it depends who Marcus used to live in.
Well, that's when hunger becomes greed. Okay?
But you have the story then of one of your private patients who come, and she speaks and she speaks and she speaks and she speaks. So I was wondering what made you decide when you were going to contrast and have the very privileged private patients, why would you bring them in? It creates quite a sense of dissonance when you read this in contrast to the actual material hunger that other people that you engage with face. So,
now I'm going to do the therapist thing.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Say more about this. Sorry, Pierre.
I'm not paying you. No, but the one life is very privileged, the other life is not, and both people have a need, but they're very different needs. So I'm wondering how do you think about that? Why did you put it in there and other places you didn't put in the private patients' experiences?
Well, in my first papers, of course, I would just focus on one thing. But then as I started writing up my findings in serious ways, I started looking with the same kind of attention to my middle class practice, and and also saw, for instance, a very simple thing that we interviewed depressed women, and we realized that their main emotion, their main feeling that they report is actually anger and rage. So here are people all diagnosed with clinical depression, but actually they are really angry about really real things. And then I wrote a paper, and I was very happy with the paper, and then I thought, oh, but other people, who are depressed. And I started asking those questions about anger, and I realized that that's the thing, but it's nowhere in any of the diagnostic systems that people who are depressed are actually also very angry. So I'm very convinced that things that are issues for the people that I see in the valley are also issues for the people in my middle class practice, like violence, like rage, like anger, like hunger. But it's much more authentic and much more hidden and much more defended against. But if you look, so I think it's very interesting how the lives of people on the margins actually serve to illuminate the lives of people in the middle. Because the stakes are higher. If someone gets angry, in the valley, they might hit someone very badly. When someone gets angry, they might do something different in a middle class home. But it's still, yeah, absolutely. Or put something in their whiskey, or hide their golf balls. So it's and the stakes are not so high, but the emotional textures are the same. And I think so. I don't think what I'm writing here is only about poverty. It's also about being human, and all the chapters are hunger, love, distress, death. All the chapters also are, I think, with any person that I encounter or that my students encounter, I can go through those 9 categories, and that's what makes them human, and that's where their problems are. Their problems are with love and stress and birth and home and death and loss and work. And so it's also about simply being human, and how terrible it is if you are human and you have the same fun. And so everyone has the same fantasies in the same areas, but some people's needs and hopes are not legitimized or not respected, and others are.
Sure. So maybe something slightly different. The chapter on the stress, when I read it, I read it and I thought, because in that it's basically your declaration of your position on therapy, on being a therapist, how one should be a therapist, and how one should look, and how one should see beyond the words and beyond the things. So the first thing I thought was, everybody in therapy is going to read that, and it's going to ruin their therapy, because they're going to keep on looking at the therapist and wondering whether the therapist is looking at them in the same way and what they're seeing and not seeing. So I'm wondering, what I'm wondering though is, as a therapist, how are you trying to see when most of us try not to see? Isn't that very hard? It's very hard to have to see.
Yeah, but it's also very interesting.
Yes,
and
yeah. That's what I was hoping you were going to say.
No, it's once you become curious, then it becomes interesting and fascinating, and if you know there's yet another layer, then you want to open it up and you want to get there. So I think I'm very fortunate that I am absolutely not bored at what I'm doing for one day. It's wonderful to be allowed into people's lives and to be able to listen to it and to know there's yet another layer. So it's hard, and I think one gets tired, and it's difficult, but the rewards, I think, outweighs what is hard.
So maybe then also for anybody else, like our little chocolate box moment, that it is, when I read that chapter, I'm like, yeah, I must remember that one must notice. You must look around you. Usually if you have lucky enough to be able to travel, then it's when you travel when you actually suddenly realize that I have to notice what is happening, how it looks in the, who's behind the counter at the supermarket. What you are really saying, one of the things that one could get from the book is maybe that people must be more alert, less indifferent again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you happened to send me I don't know, you sent me the...
Posted it on Facebook.
Okay. But I'm not on Facebook. The Hogan poem where he says, our job is not to understand or to analyze, our job is to notice. Now, I'm not saying it so nicely, but I'm just it's not. But it is to notice and to see, and I think once you see, different people will have to do different things with what they see.
Some people will be very, they will be very unhappy that they actually started seeing this life. You have to confront whatever happened. One last question before we ask the audience, or one last set of questions about language. So most of the interviews is clear from the book, because some of the words are in Afrikaans, were done in Afrikaans. So
All of them.
yeah, so and it's a very specific Afrikaans. It's not the burger Afrikaans. Yeah. So I'm wondering, I wonder whether something got lost with translating into English. How did you feel? What were the decisions made there and the discussions there about the taal, so to speak? Because the fact that there are some of it in Afrikaans gives it makes it more believable, more complex in some way.
Yeah, I stressed about this a lot because the interviews in Afrikaans are beautiful. It's the language is so beautiful, and the metaphors and the use of language is so clever. So at times I kept it in when there's like someone saying like man jy luister my so baie kap jou oor sit al langs jou gat.
Not translatable.
Not translatable. You know, some Afrikaans swear words also, I've kept in. So a lot got lost, and I think the problem of translation is a huge one. What I did most of the translations myself. I'm happy to have a family member who is the most wonderful translator in the world. And by the way, base has just been put on the base by the Anchor has just been.
And you quoted extensively in the
on the Booker long list. So yeah, so that's very exciting. But so I have wonderful consults with him, but I think the translation made that because I translated things, I also read very closely, and I could really pay attention to every line, and I tried to analyze lines the way I would do it with my students when we analyze their sessions.
Okay, so maybe one last question, because the book is also full, your students are in the book.
And they
Yes, so do you want to say a little bit more? Some of them here. Some of the stories involving students going to the valley and doing interviews, like the student who interviews the man who's turned to gangs, and she thinks that he's taking a knife out of his they are quite hard stories. Like, so I wonder how one negotiate those spaces with students with whom you are in some kind of power relationship.
Well, I so enjoy being a teacher of students, specifically clinical students. I mean, the best times I have are with my students in class, reading interviews, listening to interviews, trying to understand what's happening to our patients and what's happening to them while they're with the patients. So I have thought, when I wrote them into the book, I wrote a lot. I wrote about us, and then when I got to reading the book more as a whole, I actually shuddered to think what we put our students through, and I felt, how they have to deal with such complex emotions of guilt and shame and their own anxiety, their rage at what they see, so this book is, in a way, a huge tribute to my students who've just done incredible work and are still doing incredible work. And it's so nice that so many of them are here, ex-students, and I have ex-students of 20 years ago. That's terrible.